I'm just going to leave us screwed up because I don't feel like changing it. Hopefully he'll come back at some point.
It's fine.
Yeah, hello everyone, and welcome to Chat for the Deep, our weekly live stream post-session discussion. We talk about what happened during D&D. This is a chat for session 53, so if you've not watched that session yet, please go do that, because there will be spoilers. I'm your DM, Eric, and joining me we have Gottwald's player, Chris.
Hello. No nuts
And-
tonight, but I've got toast with honey.
Okay, that's a midnight snack.
Uh-huh.
And did you make this? Is it warm toast that you just made right now? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Air fryers, man. Air fryers are the bomb.
We had an air fryer a
Put a
couple
piece
years.
of bread in there for 4 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know. We couldn't.
Couldn't figure it out.
Maybe we didn't have a good one or something. Or maybe we were trying to do like chicken or fries or something that was like, this is not.
It needs to be like small, like I need something right in the next 5 minutes sort of things.
She just
We
wanted.
can make toast in 5 minutes. Yeah.
All right.
You
And
can do
then
like small amounts of vegetables too, but especially for a family, I don't think it's probably
right.
gonna work.
And Max player
Now
Raymond.
Now
is
Ray's
here.
here.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for delaying discussing your food needs. Reason I screwed your camera up a little bit. Let me fix that. There we go. So yeah, I enjoyed this session. The event that you guys came across last time, I had mentioned there's a bunch of this whole area is basically just a series of creepy events is how it basically plays out. And the one of the events I put in the temple last session, which was the guy getting thrown into the pit. And then the other event that I used was the cliffside ritual of them like throwing babies off of a cliff.
So these are the things that you said last time that like they're just part of the village thing initially? They're just like creepy things that you come across as you're walking around the village?
Right. Yeah. And it's in fact there's a whole sanity system that I kind of not really using necessarily. And frankly, I guess I'll get a little bit into it where the campaign goes in a little bit of a Lovecraftian tone here that I was actually not wanting to necessarily go because I think that took away and was kind of confusing in a way that I wanted to reinforce the Mind Flayer villain thing happening instead of just this like the Lovecraftian theme is fun and cool, but then the more I thought about it and the more I dug into it, I was like, well, it really takes away from what's the whole plot that's going on that's been building towards,
Right.
which is the Mind Flayers are behind it all, and why would that be a bunch of creepy Lovecraftian stuff
This
going
is
on?
a very side rant that I'm going to make here because
Sure.
I've experienced the same thing you're talking about in reading D&D 5e stuff. And that is a for me a narrative gap of like Lovecraftian stuff is cool, but the whole point of Lovecraftian stuff is that it's unexplainable.
Mm.
Like there's no lore, there's no like logical explanation. It is like, that's the point of Eldritch Horror is that it's beyond human comprehension, so it drives people insane.
I'm okay with it if that's like the main plot is like, oh, there's a device
D&D,
causing this, or there's a
But
monster.
like Mind Flayers by definition have a lot of lore
Right.
and are explainable, and they're
Right.
space aliens, and it's like they don't match the way
Right.
that I think Wizard of the Coast wishes that they did match.
Right, and this isn't actually a Wizard of the Coast adventure. This is
Oh,
a third
good.
party adventure.
Oh, okay.
But this is one of my criticisms I had, which I didn't know I had it until I got to this part of the campaign and I started really looking through it. And I was like, gosh, when I originally read this, I was like, oh, cool, this whole Lovecraftian part here. But now that I'm here and we did the whole campaign up to now, the story, I'm like, this actually doesn't really fit necessarily with what's going on, even though it's cool.
Yeah.
Instead, it needs to be reinforced that, like, no, the Mind Flayers kind of took over this Kraken Society cult and they're behind everything. And so that's all that kind of stuff is the stuff that I've had to add to this campaign. The only thing they had was that there was a Mind Flayer here, but it was just like not really in control of anything. It was just it happened to be here doing its
Okay.
thing. But it
Gotcha. Yeah.
so I ended up making it so the last time you saw the High Priest had been taken over by a Mind Flayer or supplanted, whatever you want to call it. So you actually got to find like the body or at least the head in this one.
Right.
The ritual, I had kind of alluded to the fact that the Cliffside one, and even Frannis had said like, hey, things have gotten a little darker and more extreme in the last couple of weeks, which is my way of saying the Mind Flayers, once they took over, they started escalating, and I even explained a
Sure.
little bit about here is like, hey, the colony needs food, they need bodies, so hence why Francis originally was like, this. I tried to paint it, and I think you picked up on this last week, where like the Kraken Society isn't this like benevolent religion or anything. It's still very creepy and dark, but and you guys don't have necessarily a basis of comparison to where like what does it normally look like? Like, well, you don't really get to see that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But you can pick up the fact that this is like obviously they wouldn't be able to survive if they were just nuking all their children, for example. So this must be
Right,
some kind of
yes.
extreme way. What I didn't
Yeah.
necessarily want to explain was like, oh, are they being literally controlled to do this, or are they doing this out of desperation? Because maybe I like the fact that like maybe they themselves are escalating because all these bad things are happening. So they're responding by saying, "Oh shit, we need to like up our normal sacrifices and stuff." So this is actually nothing to do with
Honestly,
like
I kind of like the idea that the Kraken Society is already dark enough
Yeah.
that if like Slurkthel came to them and said like, "Hey, give me your babies,"
Yeah.
they'd be like, "That's where we're at now." Okay.
Yeah, which I mean, look at the Christian Bible, like look at the early days of that, where it's like, hey, fucking kill your son. You're like, all right, so
All right, that's where we're going.
that's where we're at with
Okay.
this. Yeah, so I kind of played with that a little bit. Which I was funny that I thought it was going to lead to a bit of a moral thing that you guys had to deal with. Instead, Sabra got to go first, and she's like, fucking AoE attack on everybody, which is funny. And again, these necessarily aren't the best people.
Moral question, because
Yeah.
like the family members are in the crew. Like
Well,
it's
you just
like
don't know
legit,
the
like-
whole situation, I guess. You don't know. Again, it's. I think in D&D it's easy to say like, oh, they're evil cultists doing evil cult shit. We need to shut this down.
Yeah.
In this situation, like, yeah, they're kind of cultists, and this is certainly what you would consider an evil act. Do you kill everybody to stop it? You
Right.
can. Nobody's going to stop you in this situation.
But then your wizard goes first, and
Right. But what are the moral implications of that? So
yeah,
it's
okay.
funny how babies was the line, and I thought that was fun. And just I don't know what it is about babies. You can make dead baby jokes and be fine, and but like it's really what's like, oh, they just killed a bunch of people, but then we make a bunch of dead baby jokes. So go figure.
Right.
But I did love how you guys bent over backwards to like not harm the babies, make sure the babies are okay, even though you probably murdered all the parents and orphanized them. But
Yep.
there is a line somewhere, and it just made for really fun
I feel
action
like,
scenes.
Like probably kids too. If it had been like
Yeah.
10-year-olds, it probably would have been the same situation. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know where the line is in terms of age. Like, oh, they're 15.
I feel like this is
now we can kill them.
What I try to paint this as also, it's like one of those events you would have like in a Fallout game or a Red Dead Redemption or something, where it's just like some weird. There's no right or wrong answer
Right,
here. It's
yeah.
just this is a complicated event. How do you deal with this?
Yep. I think in this case we just simplified it. We just
Yeah.
said like, okay, killing babies is the line.
Is the line.
All of
we'll
you
save the
crossed
babies,
the
but all the
line.
rest are nukable. Yeah, and like you said, Sabra
Uh-huh.
keeps going first, which is hilarious. It really paints the
It
whole
is.
battlefield in a different light. But I loved how everybody like worked different methods to save all the babies. Sabra,
That was
and Sabra's
fun,
opening
yeah.
move, technically the surprise round thing, was to lay down the web and like restrain
Yeah.
the bad guys so they couldn't, throw the babies away. And then
Yep.
Cheese saved one. I think Max saved one. You ran up and grabbed one. So I loved the dynamics of that fight. It was really
Yeah.
funny. And I can't remember the last time we had a fight where it's like, oh, we can't AoE these guys because they're
Right.
carrying an important package.
You know what I'm realizing it is, and I feel like players probably, I don't know, most of the time will go for this. If you have like a video game, like a, I don't know, a what's the series called? Fire Emblem fight, where like the objectives come up. It's like defeat the enemy. But then there's like a sub objective that's like save all the babies or
Yeah.
keep the blank from
Gives you
exploding.
optional XP or something.
Yeah. I feel like players will most of the time treat them equally.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we have to save all the babies, or we
Right.
have to
Or we
keep the
considered like a
barrels from
failure.
exploding.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, so I do feel like I think those are really fun, because
Yeah.
most fights really are just one objective: destroy the enemy.
Right.
Like
Right.
they're just
Yeah.
win the
Yes,
fight.
and that's what makes a lot of fights more memorable, is when you have like, oh, there's also like this ritual we need to keep going, or we have to reach this
Mhm.
lever over here and push it. I think that does make a lot of fights that would normally be pretty straightforward a lot more time. For the same reason that I like to introduce hazards on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
whatever it is, if there's a pit or something, it instantly makes the battle that much more interesting, and players love to
Exactly.
work with that shit.
Yep.
So yeah, that ended up being just one of those.
Or cliff sides you can knock people off of.
Yeah, and the main reason I wanted to include it is because I found that good map online. That was from Tom Kartos' Patreon, but that map is freely available, and I forget what the map's called, but it looks exactly like what that landmass would be pictured as. Basically, it's like purple ass land and dark and the cliff. So
yeah.
You know what else we learned from this battle is that Savra's okay harming Gottwald.
Well, we've known that for a while, I think, to be fair. Didn't she?
I feel like that's more of a player interaction thing where Heather will like kind of look at me and be like,
"Is it okay?"
Or whoever it is, like, "Is this okay?"
I think you could tell she really wanted to do it, but she was like, "I need to make sure Chris is okay with this."
Exactly, which I appreciate. Yeah. Sometimes I'm not going to be okay with it. If I had half my health, I probably would have been like, "No, don't do this."
Because I think it was the last time she shot her wand of wonder and like hit you with a lightning bolt or something.
Right.
In the Tentrix fight.
Yep. So I appreciate player Heather like asking for.
Yeah, it's like this would be so efficient if I take all these guys down, but you are going to take a little bit of damage.
Yep.
I had rolled initiative for all those guys. I was like, if they're just going to come in guns a blazing, then they're going to turn the whole group hostile. So.
Are they just a bunch of peasants though? Like, are they just a bunch of regular folks?
No, I used most of them were the tribal warrior stat block, which is like the bandit. It's very, very low level.
Yeah.
And a few of them, including the ones that survived, were the sea spawn stat block, which is more like the thug, I guess. So a slightly hardier with more attacks and things. And then they had the scions in the back, which are definitely a lot hardier. But
yeah,
you guys all picked up on like the perfect strategy. So it just ended up being one of those like events that I didn't think much of and didn't really prep anything for. But I thought it made it, when we did it live, it was a lot of fun. So
yeah,
and you guys really made it a lot of fun. Then we got to this area, which, you guys didn't know, but I know it's kind of a mini dungeon crawl section. It has a map. This, which I mentioned a million times, Call from the Deep has only the black and white map, so I have to find maps. Weirdly, the original map is not in Roll20. I think it was just an error on their part that it should have been.
Oh.
So I didn't have that one to look at. This particular map is from the official Ghosts of Saltmarsh Discord server, and there's a Call from the Deep section, and there's a map section within that. So if you go to all those little submenus, and then you, unfortunately, searching through Discord is as awful as it seems. You have to scroll through everything, but eventually you will find this map if you scroll through everything. Sorry?
Like just somebody made this? Like
somebody made this. Yes, okay. And I unfortunately don't remember the name of the person. Somebody made one, and then somebody else resized it to make it fit Roll20, I think.
Oh, nice.
And unfortunately, the resolution isn't great. I think I had to blow it up a little bit.
Oh, I didn't notice.
But yeah, I think it's just good enough. I was like, I can work with this. So that's the map that we're currently using. Cool, and then I had to add all the assets for the tubes because none of that was in the original adventure.
Oh, really?
Yes, the original one is just a shrine. But the problem is it continues the Lovecraftian theme. It's all like just creepy Lovecraft stuff down here. Gotcha. And it's like creepy statues and a creepy shrine and all this. And I'm like, this isn't even Fathomless stuff. Like, what is going on?
Right.
And then the more I thought about it, I was like, all right, I want to reinforce the Mind Flayer thing. What if this was the Mind Flayer's like workstation? Technically, he does this in Baronzo Mine. There's no tubes anywhere, but he was like experimenting on people. And then I don't know if I should talk about that part or not. Basically, I cut a section from the final next area and placed it here. Which is his like experiment lab basically, and put his base here. And I even mentioned the fact that like he doesn't want to be here, like he wants to be back in his other base.
Right? Yes.
Yeah. Because if you noticed, I had some very important exposition to give you guys, and so I wanted to put all that in this room to hopefully give you all some good objectives and mission for the upcoming area. Because one thing I do like when it comes to big areas or dungeon crawls or whatever it is, and I did this with Rime also with the Lost City, is like, okay, you know what you need to do somewhere in the beginning of that area, right? So in Rime of the Frostmaiden, it was like, okay, we have to get to the central area, but it's guarded by like this many towers, and we have to go to all these towers to unlock this area. So you've got your objective, right? You're not just randomly wandering around trying to find something. So this was a situation where it's like, okay, and again, you don't quite know all the pieces or the context or anything, but at least I've teased the fact that there's these 4 augmenters that are basically helping the Zelix 4 thing maintain control of the Kraken, and then this thing will actually even divine the location of those MacGuffins, items, whatever.
Right. Okay.
And then I'll also give you some nice backstory on everything. So you guys just are still trying to pick up all the pieces.
Is this like, so this is all you, all this stuff? Okay.
Yes, everything in this room.
Is this the most like, because it felt like that would have made it. I was really tuned into it. I felt like everybody else was too, but like the most like, okay, this is the narrative moment.
Yeah.
Because it did kind of feel like you were just like, okay, now's where I was reminded, because I always think back to my DMing when I'm planning. In the last campaign that I did, where you guys
the high level
underwater and got the like, I don't remember how you got it, but the vision of the creator of that plane getting killed by the angel and the demon is the like, okay, here's what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, here's your like narrative, what do you call it? Backstory.
Yes.
So now your objective is based on what has happened up till now.
Yeah, because this has been a tricky one where you are making progress, but a lot of it is like just taking down the various forces, and it's difficult to even keep giving you guys the information that you need.
Right.
I've had these like psychic visions and different things, and now finally I was like, all right, there needs to be just something that can tell the players more things.
Yeah,
and then in the chat it was, and I was originally had all these other kind of bullshit ideas that were not very good, and then the chat folks had mentioned like, hey, remember that Mind Flayers in Baldur's Gate 3, they had that severed head that you could like plug in brains and get information from. I was like, fuck.
We got that far in our game, didn't we?
We did, yeah, we did.
Okay, yeah.
That was Act 2. We got through all that.
Yeah.
I guess spoilers for Baldur's Gate. But I loved that, and I was like, fuck, that's awesome,
that's
because
useful.
not only is it thematically tied to the whole Mind Flayer thing, it fits the workshop, it's very creepy, and it's a cool way to give exposition. And then I have a very cool like item thing I can give the party that acts as like a divining rod that can even find these items. So all those things like fell into place immediately. With that particular setup.
Cool. I think it worked well. It felt very much like okay, here's the exposition dump time.
Yeah.
But I felt like it worked. It was like really timed well. Where it's like, all right, because also we kind of had guessed all of this or most of it.
Yeah.
We kind of had an idea of what was going on. Like the Kraken is being controlled by something, probably Mind Flayers, because we've seen evidence of that up till now.
Yeah.
But like some of the details we were missing, like for example, them crashing here, and so they can't leave. I guess. I guess is the implication.
Yeah.
So they crashed here, and so but they did mention that like they're still gonna like try to take over the whole planet. So that's problematic.
Right. And you guys have witnessed like the Black Armada attacking, so just things have gotten pretty aggressive. Now you've been able to dismantle a lot of those forces and basically make your way all the way here to the source. So a lot of this campaign is about like trying to fight your way and get to the source of the issue, which you've almost reached there. And now you realize like, oh yeah, what you've been thinking about and arguing with Toro about, which I love, is like, oh, they've even like, they were able to take out or control the Kraken, so that means they got everything. Like they just completely gained control of this whole Kraken society, and that gave them all this other power and everything, and hence they just kind of took over all these factions and forces from there.
You take control of the entity that gives commands to everybody else, and suddenly you control everybody else.
But the important piece of information you got from here is that control is very tenuous. And I love
we didn't know that too. We also didn't know that.
Yes, and Toro was even like, "Hey, we need to free," which I love. I love that angle that he's like kind of allied with the Kraken, and I can kind of work with this in an interesting way. And now I've pointed out like, hey, there's actually like things in the final area that you can, which is me in terms of giving you guys like literally like points on your map, like objectives on the map. You enter like a big area, you could technically explore around the space, but you've got those map markers. That's like, hey, here's where there's important objectives for you to reach. Via the severed head.
You have to do these 4 things before you can go to the final area.
Right. Yep. And then we had the tubes were full of various creatures. The great, which was a very last minute thing about the cube coming in, because I was basically like, oh, I want there to be like 3 controls. I want there to be a purge and an open, and then what's the third one going to be? And I finally was like, all right, what if it was? And I thought, well, I could put a grate there, and then I tried to think about different oozes, and I'm like, none of the oozes work, but the cube actually could work because that's I don't know, just a way of like sucking creatures up and then dissolving them. So maybe that's the fun way of clean. So hopefully it was satisfying for the other crew that they were able to kind of experiment their way and do all this and kind of figure out what all the different buttons do. But it's tricky, and I did purposely have the controls separate from the area to try to create that kind of split party situation. Although you guys ended up splitting in a different way. And then I had one, I always knew I wanted to obviously do the classic thing where like one of them is broken and the creature's missing. Like, oh shit, and there's like a trail leaving somewhere else. Like, oh, we gotta fucking go deal with that.
Yep.
Which that was motivated because that part of the dungeon does have a creature in it. It is basically like a guard who's gone insane because of Lovecraftian like shit. So they're just kind of generically insane from that. But I was like, I can work with this, like insane things. It's an experiment from the Mind Flayer stuff who's like
connected
lost their mind
to the Mind Flayers somehow mentally. Yeah.
Which for folks who want to know that stat block, it's called the Aberrant Zealot. And I believe it's from whenever they did the Phandelver sequel, The Shattered Obelisk. Which is a pretty fun stat block. I definitely enjoyed. They actually have limited spell casting. And then like a bonus action they can like teleport. I didn't do any of that. I kept it pretty like simple, especially because you only had two people there with you.
Right. So. Yeah.
And technically they're just holding a sword, but I reflavored it as like a psychic blade because it did psychic damage also. So I was like, all right, that could be cool.
Nice.
About 100 hit points though that you guys had to burn through.
It felt like it. It felt like it.
Yeah. Which I was like, that's a good way of making that fight interesting because it's only 2 of you like fighting it.
Yeah.
So it went from like you guys would have probably beat it down to like, oh, this is actually gonna get pretty challenging.
Yep. I was saying before the break that I think both DM or you, I won't speak for other DMs, but, and then us as players, both like splitting the party.
Yeah.
I think it's because in a lot of situations, when you come across like with this person in the bottom section, this zealot who we encountered, usually 1 or maybe 2 players take the lead, right? Like they kind of run the situation.
Yeah.
By splitting the party, out of all 4 of us got to kind of take the lead in different things.
Yeah.
Because Savra and Toro were up there doing the crank stuff, and
cranking it,
the experimentation.
Yep.
So yeah, I do feel like that kind of helps the like, what do you call it? Disparity sometimes of, well, whoever's in front ends up being the prime player in this encounter.
Yeah, and I think we've had that discussion during the last campaign as well when we did the chats about the times where the party was, which didn't happen as much. I don't know if Ray, I meant to ask you about this. I don't know if this is something you role play as Mac or if this is something as a player that you're just wanting to do more in this campaign. But I've noticed you particularly have basically split the party every chance you get on a lot of these dungeons.
I think you have to break it down by. I think it just depends on the example. I mean, this time, what? In this situation, I was trying to use my ranger/investigator background. Like, there's some leaking fluid. Let's investigate and see where this trail goes. So
yeah, I
was like,
that's fair. You probably were the first one to go that way, and it just happens that some of the others didn't go that way.
Sarah was observing and taking notes, but I'm like, all right, I was on heightened alert. I was like, walking here, it's like something's going on, something's going to jump at us. So let me just track this trail of fluid and go from there. Other times, maybe I don't fully support what the party is doing.
I kind of want to do my own thing.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite example of this campaign so far is you. I can't remember what the situation was, but
the burrow
going underwater. No, that was a good one too. But where you went underwater and came up on the bottom of a ship while we were all having a ship-to-ship fight. You were like in the basement of the ship, just doing your own thing. You look like one of them. You're trying.
God, I don't even think I remember that one, but yeah,
that was it was a complete like there's a scenario, and then Max doing his own thing.
So you think it's because Mac maybe is just the ranger, so you're like the scout basically, and you're like, I just got to scout like ahead all these things.
Kind of. Like, I don't know. I have an idea and I want to play it out, and I feel like maybe I'm going rogue in this case. But if I try to discuss with the group, we kind of hem and haw, and then we end up just blasting everything instead.
And sometimes it doesn't happen.
Yeah,
it doesn't happen.
Like,
nothing creative. Like, I want to try to bring some creativity to it, and it sometimes involves going off.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sometimes it's because I have a shark I can ride and I can take it.
Sometimes you get a giant
shark.
So
I can do whatever the fuck I want. I've got a shark I can ride.
That's what happened in that situation Chris is describing.
Yeah.
I had communicated with the shark, and I was riding him. So I'm like, all right, well, let me ride him.
I can go wherever I want to go.
To the enemy ship, and so I'll try to take what is given and do something of it also.
Yeah.
But I think the main one is like, we all come up with ideas and we spend half a session debating what to do, and then we end up just doing something just straightforward. And
that is true. Like, and that's kind of makes almost a case for the single person splitting off, although it's dangerous and also more work for the DM. But when it's decision making by committee, usually the least interesting decision is what
the most safest,
off. The safest, like it's what's worked for everybody.
Yep.
So
and you can decide from your perspectives, but I feel like usually the things I do have some role in the overarching party, right?
I think I've said this before, but like I think probably 80% of the time I really enjoy the shenanigans you get up to. Probably.
Yeah. I will say that is a good synergy between you and Eric, though, because it requires the DM to be like, okay, they're doing an off-brand thing while everybody else is doing the on-brand thing. They're doing an off-brand thing.
Yeah.
I got to incorporate this somehow. How do I make this fit?
Yeah.
Saying that's kind of funny. I think over the time, Eric has trusted me more.
I think that's probably fair too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in the beginning, like maybe Tomb of Annihilation, I would probably shut stuff down maybe more often if you go back. And now I try to like work with you on a lot of stuff.
Right, without having to fully explain what's happening until it all clicks.
He's going somewhere with this. I'm sure.
I will say two things on splitting the party that I wouldn't recommend doing it. One is for new DMs. I think for new players it's probably fine, but for new DMs, I just think it's a lot of overhead and it can be overwhelming, and you can be tricky to put in your back head. Okay, I need to make sure to pace this with all the different parties involved. The other thing is if the players are low level, they can
when it can easily swing badly.
Yeah, it gets real tricky whenever it's like, oh shit, this person is like literally gonna die if they wander off, and I haven't you could try to balance on the fly, obviously, but it also maybe kind of cheapens the experience too. It's like, oh, you only have one skeleton in this room because you're only one person who opened it versus the the 4 I had planned in here.
But even that requires some DM know-how and some DM experience to go like, oh, I've only got one of my players going into this trap room. I need to adjust the trap right now.
Right.
To be a one-player trap. You know
what you feel about that trap? Which, by the way, shout out to Demnix. I was originally gonna have it being a damaging trap, and then he was like, just you don't have to have every trap do damage. And I started thinking about that, and I think you left that as a comment after the stream, Demnix. And I was like, that's a good fucking idea. I think that actually opens it up to just some fun, exploration RP stuff. And sure enough, I loved it. I loved that. The trap I'm talking about is the illusory mind flare that popped out of the stairs.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because I felt like going into it, I was like, all right, there should be some kind of alarm system that the mind flare would have left behind. It's a remote location. It looks like a decrepit room. So it has like the disguise, I guess, of not being a site, but still it's a very important room. So I feel like there should be one security systems. Like, all right, well, there's maybe, and like, okay, what do a mind flare leave? Okay, something that's a psychic attack or something. So I started looking at spells and I was like, okay, there's like just general illusion spells that can attack you like, mentally. And I just love the idea of like, if you which even before I described it, I made sure to have everybody roll the save, and then
Yeah.
only the people who failed the save actually even experienced it. Versus otherwise, you instantly like don't even see it at all. It doesn't manifest for you.
Oh, interesting.
And it literally
Okay.
just frightens people, and it's designed to just scare the shit out of like
Right,
any
get 'em to
peasant that
run
would wander in
away.
there. Yeah.
Yep.
But I liked how you guys instantly reacted to that, and Sabra was like, "What? What's going on?" And
Yeah. That's interesting because it turned into a fun. Yeah, like you said, it turned into a fun character moment.
But originally, I was gonna have it
I'm
be this
very
whole thing where it's like,
curious-
"Oh, you guys are gonna have to roll initiative, and then every turn you're gonna take psychic damage, and turn this whole complex thing." And instead, I change it to be like, "Let's just make it kind of an exploration, social moment instead." And
Sure.
man, that was a way better.
What
I
would
think.
you have done though if everybody had failed? Would it have become like a combat encounter, like a roll initiative? Like everybody sees the monster, so we're fighting it.
I could do that, yes. Sabra technically was already detecting magic, but like I
That's
said,
true.
she still
So
had to
that-
make the wisdom
she would have
save,
at
so
least
she
known
would
it
have,
was an illusion.
yeah, she would have done it. And I mean, you can make investigation check. I probably would have had her, on her turn make investigation checks or something.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
it's also one of those things
But-
where,
but-
again, I wasn't planning on this being like a huge deal, so it's like I could have just had it, like you guys run away and it disappears after a
Right.
minute or something too.
Okay.
So, but I would have played around with it, and I did have it do like I
Alright.
think a little bit of psychic damage because
Yeah.
I was inspired. I think it was the Phantasmal Force spell
right.
that manifests.
Like hangs out and does some damage to them.
You can either do a
They-
creature or an object, like a bridge or something, but and it can actually
Yeah.
can do damage to the recipient.
Yep.
But
Yeah, that was cool.
I like the way you
like
guys
that.
work
It
with
was-
that, and you even
it's
used
a
like a
fun-
magic
yeah.
item to like throw it. I was like, damn,
I
that's
did.
pretty cool.
I
like
mean,
that.
granted, there's no. Well, what do you call it? Charges on that. Thing. I
Okay.
can pick it back up and use it later. But I didn't want to be like, okay, what would I actually do in this scenario?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Like an actual combat.
Yeah, and that's I think the good difference between like metagaming and just playing it, because obviously you can metagame and be like, oh well, I want to make an investigation check in this situation, but
Well, that's-
Sabra didn't even say anything. I think about the
Yeah, at
illusory
first,
magic.
yeah.
She just charged forward.
The metagaming thing did come into play with the braid because I was like, I immediately went like, oh, this is the Baldur's Gate 3 thing.
Oh,
but I had to
yeah.
be like, all right, are we supposed to know this? But at some point, you made it pretty clear that like it's pretty obvious that like, oh, this thing you put brains in the thing and
Right.
it plays.
This is a
So I was like,
situation.
okay, I don't feel bad about it anymore. But I immediately like Baldur's Gate 3 literally immediately
Yeah.
popped in my head.
No, yeah, and I was
okay.
inspired clearly by that too. But I also I could have made it really obfuscated and be like, oh, they're all labeled with like alien language and all this, but
Yeah.
because it was important information that I wanted you guys
Right.
to learn.
Right. Which is good. Yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't kind of like an optional puzzle with treasure at the end. It was like, no, this is like your reward is like important knowledge. So I needed to make it
Right.
pretty obvious without hopefully like dumbing it down too much. But
Yep.
like, here's this cool. And you guys picked it up pretty quick. Like, oh, it's a playback device, and we'll start plugging in brains.
Yeah. But anyway, back to the illusion thing. Yeah, I thought that was a fun trap. It was a unique sort of situation where it's a trap, but it did some damage. But it's more, like you said, more role play.
I should keep
trap
that in
thing.
mind. Where like not every trap has to expend resource. Some of them can be just, like world building, immersion, like
Yeah.
and maybe it did trigger an alarm, but there was no like guards here or anything to come back to, and obviously Thiliaska's dead, so.
Right.
I don't know how much I can talk about the tube occupants and all of that because you guys are still technically in this area.
Sovereign Toro is still out there playing.
Sovereign Toro still up there playing with stuff, which they already, it was an investigation check to figure out how to operate the controls and what even they do, which they were able to figure that out and start testing things. So
Yeah.
it was never, I'll say this, it was never meant to be like, oh, and then I guess I'm curious, when you heard me describe this, are you thinking like, oh, they're all going to bust out of these tubes and start attacking us, or some thing is going to happen in this room?
Maybe I was really not sure. I was sort of keeping my options open. Yeah, because I was like, oh, maybe this becomes like a big combat encounter.
Yeah.
But I think about the time that you started describing the brain playback device, I was
Yeah.
like, okay, this is not going to happen.
Mm.
Or I did think at one point maybe at the end of the last recording,
Then that triggers the
he's
fight.
he's gonna do like narrative play. That would be
some good
when
pacing.
you do that.
Yeah.
But I didn't really prep for that. I kind of thought that at that point I was kind of like de-escalated.
Yeah.
I did, of course, not knowing that there's controls that mess with all this stuff. I was at one point, I was going to do what Heather suggested, but I was like, I don't know if this is a good idea. This is going to like trigger everything. when she was like, "Let's break one open and just see what happens."
I have rules in there for that.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah. I was prepared for you guys to basically mess with all the things and figure stuff out. But
Yeah.
one thing I didn't want to do was to create a big fight scene in here, or at least force one. Like you just saw how, hey, if you
Right.
turn the clean one and open up the cube, and if you're in that room, like you gotta fucking fight that cube now.
That would be, yeah.
Yeah. So there were certainly options to end up with a fight, but my goal was not to force a fight here. And I've got, like I said, we already had that fight down there, like that one was basically a forced fight. If you guys got to that person, they were,
they were, we were never going to talk our way out of that. Yeah.
Technically, I did check your spell list, and I don't think you guys had any access, but technically if you have access to either Greater Restoration or maybe like a Calm Emotions, or there's like certain spells you could have done to actually render them at least temporarily complacent, and then they might be able to tell you some more information and obviously not attack you. But it's one of those things that, like, yeah, as a DM I could cater to the party's build at all points, or I could act like it's a real fucking situation and be like a video game, be like, oh well, we just didn't bring like this party member with us, or don't have access to these abilities. I don't think
there's any problem with that.
Okay, so we can't solve the problem in the most ideal way. Instead, we just have to fight this battle.
Yep. I mean, to me, it's like video game logic of like, oh well, you don't, maybe in one of the dialogue choices, if you have a bard,
right,
you can
get the special
de-escalate this immediately, but you don't have one, so you can't do that. So you gotta deal with it. Yeah.
Yep. So in this case, you just had to fight the Saplog, which I obviously did not expect only 2 of you to fight it, and that ended up being
right.
a lot more deadly to poor Mac. Both you and Sabra, by the way, have 2 lingering injuries on you.
Yep.
She has a crippled arm and a concussion, and you have a concussion and post-traumatic stress.
The post-traumatic stress from this makes to me it thematically fits pretty well. I like it, even though it's gonna be a pain in the ass, I'm sure.
Yeah,
but we have a way of getting rid of those. Is it just the health, the medicine check thing?
Medicine check with the healer's kits, yeah, and then maybe there's other ways, but you guys haven't had
does
counseling.
Staff
counseling, lots
years of therapy.
I don't know if the staff does, actually. It has a lot of wizard spells. I feel like the healing ones would be more clerical.
That's true. Yeah.
Cleric. So yeah, you guys made it pretty far, I would say. I was prepared for you guys to go further, but I didn't expect you guys to go further necessarily. So yeah, we're still in this area, but you guys got a lot of really important information. It's gonna be a hell of a recap, which it always is when there's big story like exposition things involved, because I want to make sure that that information is pretty clear. Oh, also conveniently with the babies, kind of got rid of Sambalay for a little bit too, so that was handy, because I'm always concerned that I've got these NPCs.
Were you prepared for us to just go back to the village if we really wanted to?
Yeah, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. I thought it. Well, I didn't think about it. I was like, oh, they got babies. I was like, I'm like,
what are we gonna do with babies?
Like, well, I guess the babies are in our inventory now. It didn't think about it.
They're in our backs.
What's funny is I never thought about that Sambalay would be joining you as a party member, and then I thought oh fuck, but yeah, if they rescue him and then I send them right to this area, he's got nowhere fucking go. Like, he's stuck with them.
Right, he's with them.
It didn't occur to me until like a session afterwards. I was like, fuck, now, because I figured you would keep Borges with you, but it's like, oh, I didn't have something to have Sambalay with him. I gotta fucking do Sambalay now. But maybe that's a fun way of like at least temporarily getting rid of him, or maybe that's a fun spin-off where it's Sambalay and the babies. I don't know.
Yep. I feel like
cheese.
And cheese.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot cheese is technically not there. Well, you can resummon him though, can't you?
It's a spell slot, but yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if I should trust Samblade, but that's why I've got
cheese
cheese
there with him. Yeah, that's true. That's pretty fun.
At some point, we'll know that Sambalay made it. Like, enough time will pass.
Right.
We can bring cheese back. This is one of those things, though. I feel like as I've thought about this before. As a DM, you need to keep like a list of like things I need to mention in the epilogue. I feel like the babies needs to be one of the things. Like, what happened to those babies?
Those babies grew up to be state senators. 2 state senators, 1 serial killer.
Exactly. Yeah. One of them had some problems.
One of them comes back to hunt you all down years later
Yeah.
for killing their parents. Yeah, fucking epilogues. Anything else about this session? And again, I can't get into too much details because we're technically still in this specific area.
Yeah.
I like this episode a lot,
Good.
though. This is fun.
Yeah. Definitely.
Cool. Let's see. We are getting close to holiday breaks. Although Thanksgiving's not till the last week of November, so I think we will do next week's session Friday normal.
Yeah.
But I think we'll be on break for Thanksgiving week as we usually are.
Okay.
So don't expect a session on the 29th. And then we'll just have to figure out how December's schedule is going to work, because that always just kind of changes depending on.
I mean, I'm going to be in Texas for a while there.
Yeah,
so
you're
it's gonna
right.
be-
I think we
it's gonna-
usually take at least 1 and sometimes 2 weeks off, which I think is probably fair for us.
Yeah.
Awkwardly, we're getting close to the end of this campaign, but we're not going to finish it before
Before Christmas.
because that's only what, probably three or four
yeah.
sessions, so we're not
You're right.
that close to the end yet. Also getting very close to the end of my patron campaign as well. So,
Oh, yeah.
but I think both those will last through somewhere in the beginning of next year.
Cool.
All right, I think that is going to do it for this chat from the deep. Thank you to Chris and Raymond. Thank you to all the wonderful fans for watching, and we will see you all next week.
See you then.